is recommended that you first clean your bezels with some alcohol to make sure there is no residue on them. Start by sticking your bezel down on the packing tape. Now this is just ordinary packing tape. You need it to seal the back end, so you want to push it down nice and firm so it sticks. Now some of my bezels have the hole going the other way, and so they won't lay flat. And so I've just put some tape on this cardboard to lift them up so that this will lay flat on the tape. Stick this out over the edge of the cardboard. So then it will lay flat. Now we can start with our resin. For these bezels, I'm using Handcrafter UV resin, as well as the Handcrafter Light, which is just wide enough to go over my tape. I'm going to start by just putting a little bit in the bottom so it will seal it. And so my flower will sit more centered in the bezel. I'm going to use a toothpick to spread it around as well as remove any bubbles. Can't pop them, you can go down under them, pull them out. And to get the finer bubbles out, you just want to go over it really quick with a lighter of some kind to pop the bubbles. You don't want to overheat the resin, so make sure it just stays quick. Now we're going to put in our flowers. This is where tweezers help. Be able to pick them up and position them where you want them, as well as toothpicks will work for pushing them around. You want to be very careful with a toothpick, and you can push them around, position them where you want them, but don't push too hard on the petals because you'll get water spots that show up. Now I like to lay out my bezels and put the flowers in them so I can decide what flowers I'm going to use and how I want them arranged before I put the resin in them. gonna put the light on them and let each one harden. Now that we've got it hardened, we can put another layer on top. Flowers often float, which is why I like to stick them down in the first layer. Then I know they're going to stay where I put them. And you repeat the same process, pushing the resin to the side and popping the bubbles. Being careful not to poke your flowers, which will still create water spots in the petals. Make sure you push it all the way into the corners. That's where bubbles like to form too, as well. The corners and around the edges. They like to hide. Again, you can lightly go over them with the torch, pop any bubbles. Be careful not to overheat your resin. Once you're satisfied the bubbles are out, then we can put our light back on them. It's nice and hard. Do the same process for these two. Now I was using 10 grams and it did about these 5 bezels before it ran out. So that'll just give you an idea of how much you'll need to do your projects. And so I poured my resin in and I'm just doing the same thing that we did for the first ones. Spreading it around and popping any bubbles or lifting them out, making sure the resin gets everywhere. It can be a little time consuming to do with the bubbles, but is well worth the effort to have a crystal clear finished product. Now it's time to take them off the tape. Gently peel them off the tape and put them face down. So the part that was just on the tape is facing up. Because the part that's under the flower doesn't get the light, and so it might be a little sticky. So we're going to put the light back on them to seal that up. And we want to make sure that there's no residue from the tape. You might get some, then you can use some soapy water and a toothpick or something to scrape that off. You want to clean it all off of there because it will show up and be cloudy in your finished product. Once you've got all the stuff cleaned off, you want to make sure that they're completely dry before you apply your last layer of resin, because resin and water do not play well together. But we're going to just apply another layer on top of the back to make it dome a little bit, and this will finish it off. Oops. It's my empty one. You want to be very careful when doing this last layer, because if you fill it up too much, then it might overflow and spill out over the edge. This will help smooth out the back if there were any ripples or any odd shape from being stuck to the tape. Just give it a well-finished look. Now if it does happen to spill out over the edge, it can be fixed. It just makes a lot more work. Don't worry about it if you do, but it is good just to be careful to try to avoid it in the first place. Now that it's not stuck to the tape, it wants to move around a little bit, so you want to be very careful. Do the same thing with the other ones that you're working on. And now you have beautiful pendants that you can turn into jewelry.